Hey, it's Chris Knight, founder of Self-Intelligence. Welcome to another episode of the Self-Intelligence podcast, where everyday people just like you can get free expert guidance and support to resolve any personal problem or drama you're experiencing. Have you ever wondered why and how certain thoughts and beliefs can spiral out of control, causing you to suffer from the inside out? In this episode, I speak with Holly. On a lovely summer's day with her family, out of nowhere, Holly was debilitated by the fear she was going to die, and it has stayed with her ever since. Holly reached out to have this podcast episode with me to overcome the anxiety and suffering this fear has created in her life. In this episode, we discuss overwhelm, mental health issues, panic attacks, toxic coping mechanisms, and ego identity, and I take Holly through some powerful questions that very quickly bring her home to herself, which is where blocked toxic thoughts and fears can be released. A big thank you to Holly for sharing the struggle she has been going through that will provide clarity and hope for anyone who feels debilitated by their mind. Thank you, Holly, for coming on today to discuss the fear of death. I love this conversation around death because it's a very powerful perspective provider. It's something that is taboo a lot of the times in our discussions and clear seeing. Because of that, there's also a lot of fear around death, loss, these types of things. It can wreak havoc in your psyche and that voice in your head. And instead of that taking place, you've reached out to have this session just to get some support because this is starting to get a little bit out of hand, or more than that. And it's escalating. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've been experiencing around this fear of death?
Yeah, it first manifested as a panic attack. I was out jet skiing with my mum and some family members, and all I remember is I was sitting there and this overwhelming fear, or in my mind, I was like, everything's about to end. And I think there was imagery of like explosions and like the world was just going to vanish. I guess it was like my first felt sense of like what that would feel like, and not being here anymore. But it was all happening very quickly. And I just remember not being able to cope with that feeling. And I remember looking at my mum and saying, I'm not okay. And she was like, what do you mean? What's wrong? And I said, I feel like I'm going to die. She was just like, oh, okay. Maybe go in the water. And so I was like, okay. And I went into the water and it kind of calmed me for a second, but then I couldn't feel the bottom. And then it just kind of came in like another wave of it. And then I took myself to the grass alone, away from people. And I just remember I had to hold onto the grass because everything else didn't feel real. And I just had to sit there with it. But it took me like a whole day to kind of come right. And since then, some other things have manifested, like fears at night about death. That was the first big experience I had with it.
And how long ago again did this take place?
It was about a year ago, and I will mention that the night before we had all been out drinking together. So I think that did impact it.
Well, this is where the mind gets very creative, and there's a lot of different opinions, right, about what these things mean. Is this a premonition? Is this intuition? Is this something to listen to and take seriously, right? It's very confusing territory where we're discerning truth and reality versus what our minds can create and how we can be so disturbed by our minds, if that makes sense to start with. I think it's important to realize from a very early age, every single one of us has had the capacity to freak ourselves out. The boogeyman. I use the boogeyman a lot because everybody can remember at some stage in their early childhood development, imagining there's some kind of monster or scary man or something in the closet or under the bed, and there being a real fear around that, a physically felt terror could take place, not being able to sleep, needing mum and dad to, keep the light on or come in and make things better. At some point, there was an awareness developed and an attention was not continued down that track of those thoughts. Now, for some people, even as adults, they're still afraid of the dark. They're still afraid of what could be, in the closet or under the bed. And there's still that discomfort playing out. It's still happening. For a lot of adults, they've sort of forgotten that. And it was like something they did when they were kids or something like that. What is happening with that is something has triggered the imagination, which is generally the unknown, right? When we talk about the dark, when we're afraid of the dark, we're afraid of the unknown, what's in there. And so we can create things to be there, if that makes sense. We can create imagery and feelings, and it's tremendous, like what we experience with these things. Now, can you relate to having done that with things like I'm talking about? So not this death thing, because I think it's too close right now to talk about in respect to, how I'm approaching this. But can you remember a time where you've been afraid by the thoughts in your own mind, but then that has no longer the case anymore?
I do actually. Yeah.
Okay.
I used to have a fear of magpies really strongly, to the point where I couldn't even walk outside when it was their season. I would have to always carry an umbrella with me, even going on a walk. It was, I guess you could even call it a phobia, whereas now I don't need to do that. I've made peace with them.
Phobias are good examples too, actually. Now, of course, when you get attacked by a magpie, when you're a young child, it's terrifying.
Yeah, that is the truth. Like, it was really scary.
Yeah, exactly. So then you can carry that past story with you into impractical places. So like you just said, it wasn't even magpie season and I still had to have an umbrella. I still had to have something protecting me just in case, even though that wasn't going to happen.
Mm-mm.
So we can just see how influenced we are by fear. As we get older, somehow this is not seen crystal clearly, and we continue to make deeper meaning out of the thoughts that are in our mind. And this is even encouraged in a lot of circles, actually, to really invest in what the mind is throwing up. But after this session, that's going to be less of a concern. And that's something you're going to not suffer, because otherwise you're molesting yourself from the inside out with these things. So you had an experience where all of a sudden, this was a year ago, you thought you were going to die. You thought the world was about to collapse and there was going to be explosions and all these things. And what you said was really important, is that I didn't feel like I was going to be able to cope with that. Now, what traumatizes the mind, or what often creates trauma, is a sense that I'm not going to be able to cope with something that happens in reality. So there's so many experiences human beings are subjected to and that are possible, right? Because it's certainly possible that war could break out, or a comet could hit the planet and there's an explosion and everyone dies. And these are all possibilities, right? But you don't suffer possibilities. Otherwise, you'd be suffering everything all the time, because there's so many possible things that you could suffer that could go dreadfully wrong every day.
Mm-hmm. That's the hard part, because when I'm imagining them, they feel real.
Yes. So let's talk about a little bit about that. There's the body-mind connection, which means every thought that you have in your head is literally chemically translated through the hypothalamus into the bloodstream as neuropeptides and neurohormones, as a physiological experience in your body. Most of those thoughts are very subtle in the way that they impact the body, because they don't have fear in them. They don't have threat. They don't have something to be concerned about. So that you don't necessarily feel your body strongly impacted by those thoughts. And yet they are impacted. Every thought, okay, you could be thinking right now, or start thinking about your to-do list today, and your body will contract slightly to match the intention to do the to-do list. And all of a sudden your body's sort of energizing itself for that activity, and it's already happening, right? When you say you have these thoughts, then they are experienced in the body. The body is related to as something that is fundamentally real.
Mm-hmm.
This is real. My body is real. And there's, of course, the relative truth in that. But when you experience your thought that was imagined, that has nothing to do with reality, it's imagined, something's created. And that creation gets married up with this physical form and takes shape in you. Now it marries up with what seems to be real. So I've got to take this seriously. I've got to consider this, and I've got to look at this, and I've got to react to this. I've got to respond to this. This is how we start to become. So you've got this fear of death that's come out of nowhere, out of the blue, sort of hit you, had a very strong physical experience of that. Is it clear that your physical response was after what you imagined or what came into your mind? Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes. There is a lot of confusion about this, in that there can be this idea that my body is reacting to something that's got nothing to do with my perceptions. But when you look really closely and when you're extremely aware, you'll see that the body is purely an expression of your perceptions. It's like the physical manifestation of your internal state. You experienced breaking down and you said you had a panic attack. What did that look like?
Well, when I had to sit on the grass and hold onto it, it was like, because I felt like I was losing myself, and that was my way of maybe grounding, to try to ground myself and try to ride what I was feeling. And I just remember telling myself like that, I just have to confront the feeling rather than trying to resist it. And it took a while, and then I would have moments where it would kind of dissipate, calm, dissipate, and then come back. And I said to my mum, I'm not even sure if I need to take myself to a hospital. Like, it was really strong. I've never experienced that before.
Wow, the power of the mind, hey? Because you're here. A year later, you're here.
Yeah.
And there's no reality to this, but you can be thinking maybe there is a reality to it, or maybe there could be a reality to it coming. And that keeps this thing alive, because it's like, maybe I've tuned into something that I need to keep energizing and thinking about and, mulling over and investing in. Yes. But as you can see, doing that is very unstable, because in a breath, your same mind can say, that's nonsense. Don't think about that. There's no point. Your mind, the same mind that created this thing, can say, don't worry about it. It's useless. It's pointless. And then the same mind a second later will say, yeah, but what if? What if this is what's going to happen? What if this is, a premonition or something like this? And it's like, okay, clearly, if you can have both of those thoughts, the whole thing is unstable. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
There are a few questions here I want to go into that are going to be supportive to disentangling yourself and to prevent yourself from turning this into a thing. Because with, say, a phobia, right? A phobia is when something happened that you don't like, you didn't like the experience, and you didn't feel like you could cope with the experience. And then there's this sense in yourself, I don't ever want to experience that again. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle to have that happen again. And then when the thing happens again, it reaffirms that idea, and it actually becomes worse. So because there was still a reaction again to whatever that thing was, it's now worse, and it's proven, I can't handle this. I can't handle this. I can't handle this. This is going to be an important dialogue for you to be very aware of, this sense of, I can't handle this.
It manifests in all other areas. So yeah, I can see that.
If you would like to discover who you really are beyond the voice in your head and emotional states that cause relationship drama, stress, health issues, procrastination, sabotage, addictions, essentially all the drama and personal problems you can think of, come and join me for the Wake Up Experience, which is the first step in freeing yourself from the inside out. See the link in the description for more details. Yes. So the idea that you can't handle reality is manifesting in ways that are proving that you cannot handle reality. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then that blockage that's in you, because when you say, I can't handle reality, what happens is you essentially are now with your willpower is you're resisting reality. You are resisting the flow of life. And it becomes a blockage in you. And the blockage in you that is now getting more and more momentum has to somehow express itself to release itself, because it's not true. It's not aligned with nature. It's not aligned with fact. So it tries to release itself. And oftentimes it will do that through your dreams, and it will do that through your imagination, and it will do that through situations and circumstances. It will be triggered to be released. And if you've had I can't handle taking place in various areas of your life for a long, long time, it'll seem like what you explained was a random event. Out of nowhere, I felt like the world was going to fall apart. But actually, it's oftentimes the accumulation of the blockage that has been taking place with so many areas of life that had just been unchecked, unnoticed, identified with, suppressed again, blocked again, and then all of a sudden it just comes through as this big whoosh. And it's like, people have this happen all the time. And that's where panic attacks come from. Oftentimes people will say, look, I've had a panic attack out of nowhere. Out of nowhere. All of a sudden I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die. And it's like, it hasn't come out of nowhere. It has been building and building and building subtly over time until it's got to a critical point, and then poof, it explodes on you.
Yeah, because I often get told about panic attacks, like lots of things we all get told and you believe them. And I'm sure there is some truth to it. Like panic attacks are just because something overwhelming happened to you or a result of PTSD, or is that kind of still relevant, do you think? Or there's just two sides to it, I guess.
Yeah, well, in what I'm hearing, what you're saying is people have experienced a lot of things that they haven't been able to handle.
Yeah. So it is the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like, I can't handle now that, it's like we live blissfully unaware until really full on things happen, like major loss or like seeing people die or things like this that are traumatizing, that are overwhelming. Those things will release out of our system very quickly. But because we have this sense of self inside, this person, the me, who says, I can't handle that, then the willpower of that holds it in place in yourself and holds it like a resistance against reality, a resistance against life and life energy and life force. And is like a compensation, a deep energy hemorrhaging compensation is now taking place. And it's like it's a downhill spiral because it creates so much discomfort that it starts to attract in, addictive behaviors and distractive needs and all sorts of crutches and compensations to kind of cope with that. But what we're getting clear about is the underlying belief that is the ego in you saying, I can't cope with life. I couldn't bear this to happen. I couldn't bear this loss. Now, I facilitated so much of this type of work through inquiry, which we'll do a bit of today, but also emotional release work, where you actually get out of the way and let that energy pass through. You let that energy move. And now, all of a sudden, reality is the same. All the unbearable possibilities are all still there as they are, but you're deep in your heart now and you feel a sense of stability and a sense of strength. That's not coming from the fact that you can control the world out there, because you know that that's not possible, but you're not investing in the mind, fearful projections and imagery. And it's like that stuff is now being witnessed, not it's me in a reality. So let's look at some of the questions that will support you. To be clear, the first time that anything like this happens, I get people to put this down and log down the situation and the problem. The situation is a fact, this is what's happening. And the problem is often what the mind projects onto that, okay? And that comes in the form of shoulds and shouldn'ts, what if, the meaning, and the limiting beliefs and the needs that are associated with the situation. So in your case, what if would be really strong here. When you're fearing death, it's a what if fear. What if this was to happen? What if I was to lose my son? What if I was to die? And when you have those what ifs going on, you're imagining all the unbearable possibilities. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm imagining the unbearable kind of feelings associated with those things. And it's like the feelings are very much how I would feel if they were happening, I think realizing for the first time that it is a possibility. It's like I knew like death can happen, but it was like my first real sense of, oh no, this can really happen.
Okay, and now the belief is, like we've discussed, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
Let's just look at that. Let's look at I can't handle it. One of the first questions is the triggering situation personal? Now, not every one of these questions relates to every situation. And when you learn the inquiry process very specifically for yourself, you understand the questions that really relate to what's going on for you. But I still want to open that one up because personal is where all the problems are. You don't have a problem without the personal. So is death itself personal?
It feels so. Yeah, it feels like it.
Okay. So let's look at that. Let's look at that a bit more deeply because the belief is I'm a person. Fundamentally, I'm a person. And we've got to look then at how real then this person is. Because what is this person? What is a person? Like you claim to be a person, but what is that?
I'll have my body. That's all I can think of. Like I have this, that is real.
So are you your body?
No, I feel like I'm my person, like my personality. That's the other thing that comes to mind.
Okay. But you just said a second ago, you felt like you're your body. I'm my body. And it feels like that because that's where you experience everything, isn't it? Your body is your experience. Yes. So if I experience it, it must be me.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of sense about it. Yeah. And then when I say, are you your body? All of a sudden something changes. It's like, and anyone who's listening to this, tune into when you ask that. Something all of a sudden rejects it and goes, no, I'm not my body. But why is that? Because if for example, clearly for consciousness to be experiencing this reality that we're all experiencing, the body is part of that. But you could remove your arm because you had some disease or something like that. Would any part of you, the person, so to speak, be lost because you don't have an arm?
No.
Okay. So then you're like, well, I know the body's there, that's important for this experience, but it doesn't actually fundamentally define me. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. So because you would be there still, I would be here, but my arm would be no longer here. So the I that's still here is not fundamentally then connected to the physical body. True or not?
Yes, true.
Okay. So then you say, oh no, I'm my personality. Okay, what does that mean? What is a personality?
Well, I just laughed because I think I realized that's not true either.
Well, what is a personality that when you first mentioned it, what does that refer to?
Your personality is how you it's your unique presentation to the world.
Mm-hmm. And give me some attributes of that.
Like mine or
or of anyone's personality, like what that could look like. Yeah.
like whether they show up as introverted or extroverted, like personality traits, whether they're more courageous or more reserved, those kinds of things.
Actually, I was just watching a documentary on George Michael, the singer.
Oh yeah.
Called Wham. It's on Netflix, and he was talking about how his personality that he can relate to growing up was very introverted, very quiet and to himself. And when he had this immense drive to be a musician, the audience that loved his music wanted and was asking for a more extrovert type. Yeah, this is someone who was very like jumping around stage and giving the audience something that felt very energized and connected. So he literally spoke about creating this person to present to the audience he could tell what they wanted, you see. Now, anyone listening to this, notice how you can shift your personality depending on the audience. Who could the audience be? The audience could be my parents, or the audience could be my best friend, or it could be work colleagues, or it could be anyone or anything. Yeah. And it's all of a sudden I can become a persona that I feel would best suit the situation. Yes.
So that's more like a skill you can learn, really. Yeah.
So something must be beyond the personality to know how to adjust the personality for the benefit of whatever the situation is. Because if you were fundamentally your personality, you wouldn't be able to change it at whim. Does that make sense? And some people, including yourself, may be able to identify that there were personality traits that I had or had that literally don't exist anymore. Certain personality traits have vanished. I don't have certain interests or likes or dislikes or whatever the case that defined me, they're no longer here, or they've changed even. Maybe they're still here, but they're not the same. And you can even say that. You can say, yeah, I've changed a lot, you know, I've changed a lot. I used to be like this and now I'm like this. It's like, okay, who's saying this? And who knows you've changed?
I don't know what to call that.
Now, this is where we got to go, you see, because when we come to the fear of death, we're talking about the part of you that is actually not a reality. And you're going to slowly start to see the person is actually more of a fiction than it is a fact. Because if I really look at it, it's constantly in flux and is transient and is subjective and meets the moment in very selective ways. It's not as rooted in a reality that it feels like it is. When you really look, you see, that's why it's called an illusion. The person inside that takes all of life personally, that the only way that it gets a sense of being a person is by identifying with things. So first you identify with the body, but then you kind of loosen on that. Then you identify with personality traits, then you quickly loosened on that as well. Even before I started talking about what I just did, you loosened up on that too. And then you're like, okay, so who am I?
Yeah.
Because I'm so afraid that I'm going to die. This person inside, but I'm not now actually feeling like I can locate that. Like even as you sit right now, can you locate where a person is inside you? Like the person exists right here. Can you tell me?
It feels like it's inside me.
But where?
Like just in like my core, but I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, but that's fine. Let's go in there. And can you say inside somewhere in here exactly where you exist as a person?
I don't.
You don't. What do you want to elaborate on that? What do you mean?
As in I can't feel a person?
Would it be more true to your experience that you're not really located anywhere?
Yeah, the only thing I can feel into is that it's just my skin and my body that's barrier in between what's in here and out there.
Okay, let's look at that. So when you come back to being what I like to call the witness or the observer or the awareness you're noticing, you can feel your body. Like you can notice your breath right now. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
You can notice the weight of your body. Yes?
Yeah.
And as you realize that you're the observer, like you're witnessing these things, if I was to ask you, where does the observer start? Where is its origin? Where's its beginning point? Could you really say?
I go straight to my mind, I think, naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I can't really say.
Okay. So you're able to witness your body. There's a sense that you're in your mind. And then I would say, are you the witness to the feeling sense that you're in your mind? That which is witnessing that, where does it location? Where is it coming from? For anyone who's listening into this, do this for yourself. This is for everybody, right? Because oftentimes we do feel like I'm here in my head. I'm like sort of between my ears. No, that's not where you started though. You started in your heart. But anyway, we've come up here and it's like I'm in my brain or something like that. And then there's this observing, but I'm actually the witness of that, to say that. I'm witnessing that I'm in my brain or something. And I'm saying, where is the one that's witnessing that located? That's saying I'm in here, I'm up here. Does it have a location?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, don't go with a thought, go with your experience. This is what I love about this work, is it's not something you're being told or have to come up with an answer. It's literally just as you experience, right? Can you locate where this awareness is that you're in your mind? That which is aware that you're in your mind, is it locatable itself in your experience?
No.
Okay. So that's the truth. What's not true is what you're witnessing, because you just told me two things. You said, I'm in here. You pointed to your heart. And then you said, no, I'm up here. So both weren't true.
Mm-hmm.
You changed your mind in a second like that. That's why I asked you to go in there deeper and see if you can find yourself. And when you go in deeper, you're like, wait, I don't know if I'm there. I don't know. Maybe I'm up here. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, that assumption that I took all of a sudden just by looking wasn't true anymore. Now I'm in my head and I say, okay, what's witnessing that? And you're like, I don't even know. And it's like, now we're getting to truth, because in both cases, you imagined yourself. That's why with self-intelligence, I say, discover who you are beyond who you believe yourself to be. If you were to say you're in your mind or your heart or whatever, you had to believe that, but you don't know that until you look. And when you look, what you know is you're not either of them. It's just known to you. It's not even something that anyone has to teach you like that. I'm pointing it to you for you, but I don't have to teach you that, if that makes sense. Like you just know, I don't know. It's not anywhere. It's not locatable really. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's who you are fundamentally, is this unlocatable witnessing presence. And it's the one who can say, I feel sick. It's the one who can watch your breath. It's the one who can watch your mind. Okay. So when I said, what's going through your mind? You would say, oh, this is going through my mind. How do you know what's going through your mind? Because you're witnessing it. And when you are not aware that you're the witnesser of what's going through your mind, you can actually believe that what's going through your mind is itself a fact. No different to when you're sleeping and you're dreaming of someone chasing you. You don't know you're dreaming. You believe you're being chased.
Yeah, I had a dream like that last night, a fear dream. And I woke up with the, palpitations, like it was real. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're the dreamer dreaming up a scenario, and then you're running from your own self. Why? Because you don't know you're the dreamer. You don't know you're the one witnessing this dream. Same as if you watch a really good movie, you completely forget your body, you completely forget your life, everything, and you're just in the movie. And if it's a scary movie, then you're scared because you're so invested in what's happening on that screen and the story that it's creating, and all of it seems real.
I can't actually watch horror movies for that reason.
This is a degree of maturity, because to discover something like self-intelligence is to mature in your capacity to see what is real. And what that actually means is you discover the reality that is the only reality is the witnessing of what's happening, and what's happening in of itself is not real. It's not a permanent reality. And if you go through everything, you'll see everything is constantly changing. So it's not in itself permanent. It's not the ground of life. It's not where you're going to find stability from. The mind is the last place you're going to find stability from, because it's constantly changing and it's constantly telling all sorts of different stories and things. But it is a vessel in this life. It's a tool, and it's a powerful tool. But if there's not the capacity to see that, to have some space, that is not who you are, then it can throw up ideas like, I'm going to die, and you can be having a literal panic attack. This is how powerful it is.
Yeah.
So then you got to come back and go, wait a sec, is this personal? Is this witness that is unlocatable? Was it born?
No.
Okay, so does it die? If it's not born, can it die?
Mm-mm.
So the mind will die. The mind will die, the body will die. 100%. We've seen this happen. But that which is the witness, was it ever born?
No.
Is that which is witnessing different in you than it is in me?
No.
Okay, so it's the same thing. This is where we're actually united. This is where we're one. So is this personal?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you've shifted a bit now, because when I first asked you, is it personal? You said, well, it feels personal. Feels personal. Of course it does. You're believing like Velcro, like there's no space, that there's a fact happening. So of course it's going to seem personal in that case. Are the thoughts that you're believing, like I will not be able to cope, true and factual from the place of being the witness?
No.
So clearly whatever happens is going to be very disturbing to your mind, no doubt. People die and all these things, and to your heart there's going to be grief, there's going to be all those things which are natural to the human experience. But if you're able to take a step back and let all that do its thing, let the grief happen, let the emotions take place, let the thoughts take place, and let them come and go, because grief comes and goes, doesn't it? Have you had loss in your life?
Yeah.
Yeah. And have you noticed that particularly the more you discover truth, that you don't feel the same way about those losses as you once did?
Yeah, no.
So it comes and goes, doesn't it?
Mm.
The capacity to truly allow things to come and go actually verifies how much you can cope with. I can cope. I didn't believe the person I believe I mistook myself to be could cope, because it cannot cope. It cannot cope with loss because it's a loss of itself. Because the person's identified with all those things, so it cannot cope. So that's kind of actually true. The person cannot cope, but who I am can cope. If I'm to register who I am and let these things come and go, because guess what? Is life going to support the person inside you who cannot cope?
No.
It's not, is it? It's just going to.
But no.
Do the thoughts you have about the situation make it your business? So in the case that there are explosions and that there is a whatever the thing is this your business?
No.
But did you make it your business when you mistook yourself as the person inside?
Yes.
Hmm.
Very much so.
So see how there's a sense of relaxing from this. Can you notice a sense in yourself already as we speak and bring you back to your witnessing state, that there's a immediate sense of able to sort of relax a bit more about this, like this fear of death? Yeah. You tell me as we go along, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat yourself and others when you believe this thought? I can't cope with life. I can't cope with death or loss. How do you treat yourself and others?
I tend to kind of avoid people more, and that's when I'll stay inside a lot more. So I suppose I isolate myself.
Perfect. So whenever you believe what the mind is saying 100%, you actually have to prove what it's saying is true. Okay, so when it comes to loss, like loss of your dad that you mentioned at one point, like fearful, maybe that was before we had this podcast, but you mentioned it to me before we discussed that you had fears of him dying and so on.
Yeah.
And it says, I can't cope with these losses. Then you actually start withdrawing, and what happens is you start experience the losses. So if you fear loss, all your actions and behaviors are going to ensure that you're losing things.
Right. Okay.
So if you withdraw yourself from your dad, for example, in the fear of loss, you're already losing him in your withdrawal. So you can experience what you think you can't cope with. It's like, I'm gonna take control of this unbearable existence. So what I'll do is I'll withdraw, and that's how I get control. And then you get the losses that you're afraid of.
Totally.
So what's important there is to see that you get what you fear, but not in the way that your mind necessarily imagined, like you know, explosions and these things like you were talking about, but in the fact that you're withdrawing yourself, and in withdrawing yourself, you're sustaining losses in doing that. You could all of a sudden become agoraphobic, can't even go out of the house, and these types of things.
I was even thinking like OCD type behavior. I remember in the past I would obsess about not turning, like the oven or the stove off, and I'd be late to work because I had to go home and check because of fear and then because I started seeing imagery of the house burning down and then what that would mean, and you'd be homeless and blah, blah, blah. Like it was endless.
Perfect. So you've got a few different examples. When you talk about phobias and you talk about OCD, these are all very similar mind-based when we've essentially over-identified with the mind, when the ego is in control. And then if you're not aware enough, you'll just listen to what those thoughts are saying and try to please the mind itself. So pleasing the mind is to go back to your house and do the thing, because the mind will go, yes, then I'm happy. But you have the capacity any moment, because you're beyond the mind, to say, no, I'm not going home. I'm going to trust that I've turned everything off and I'm going to work instead. And then the next thought will be, no, I can't cope with that. I've got to go back. And then the next thought will be, no, I'm not going to. And then I'm at this war with myself, you see. So in order not to suffer that, you have to have the discipline and the practice and the habit in your life of asking the right questions that brings you back to your root foundational witnessing place. And both of those thoughts dissolve. Both of those thoughts don't have traction. They would just come and then they go. And you're much clearer in what actions to take. And if you intuitively feel, yes, it's time to go home and, look at something or not, and whatever the case, you're much clearer. What parts of yourself is the belief that you cannot cope suppressing and affecting?
Well, I did go to a acupuncturist recently, and he found a pressure point that was I've never had acupuncture that hurt. And it was where my kind of kidney area is, but he put the pin in my foot, and I said, I can't cope with this feeling because it was too painful. And he said, this is also the area that's associated with fear. What are you scared of? And I was like, everything. I feel like I'm scared of literally everything.
So all that, yes. So what that's saying, if you're scared of everything, there's a immaturity in your consciousness that you are like a parentless child in the world, because the parent in you is the consciousness and the child in you is the mind. But you're not, without the consciousness, the child doesn't feel safe to play and to explore and to learn and to journey as it would. If there's no parent there, there's a sense of overwhelm and fear and confusion and just, I'm not going to be able to cope. Now, all of that has manifested, as we've talked about, into this fear of death. It's like, why not just go to the top? Why not just go to the top rung to let this be released here? My advice there is to download like the self-recognition practice and witness these thoughts. Don't get in the habit of not being invested in these images and the voice in your mind to the degree that it is now. The second that you start to witness these thoughts, recognize how different you feel the second that you start doing that. Because when you recognize, all of a sudden there's a background sense of ease. That's you. You're discovering you. And then what's happening in your life is you're going, well, I can either live by this person and be in a constant state of fear, or I can use every experience in life to bring me back home to myself. But it's so addictive. It's such an addiction to keep going with the chemistry of those thoughts, because the thoughts have a chemistry about them. When anyone does the self-intelligence course and does like the 12-week challenge, which is to essentially to create the habit that I'm talking about, I describe it as rehab, because it is an addiction. The person, for example, the person is an addition or addiction, which is what I've added to myself, and now I've got to give it over. What did I add to myself? All these identities. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm this. And all the thoughts I can't cope with, I can cope with. Life would be better like this, life would be better like that, all these things. All of these things I've added to myself have to be released, let go of, because they're toxic and they're like Velcro for more of this, more rubbish, more to come. If you would like to download a free beginner self-recognition guided meditation audio to start your journey of healing and freeing yourself from the inside out, see the link in the description or go to selfintelligence.com. Have you noticed if you clean your house, you put everything away and it's like there's that sense of, clear. Yes?
Yeah.
And something feels very good when you do that. That's why they say cleanliness is next to godliness. But then if you have something enter your house that doesn't have a place and you got to put it in like the hallway or something like that, that all of a sudden everything starts attracting to it. Like then another thing goes over there and another thing, and all of a sudden there's a pile of things that didn't exist there before. That's the same thing that happens in your mind. Is as soon as you believe something that's going on in your mind, it becomes fixed, like it stays there. And then it's Velcro for all these other delusions to attach to it. And the whole complex of that is a neurological network that is connected to the chemistry in your body, as we spoke about, which is now a sense of me. So that's why it's so addictive, because if it is to leave, then I vanish too. Wouldn't it be? I'm fearful. I'm this. If I'm no longer that, then what happens to me? What happens to me, the person? Well, of course, it vanishes, because it never was true. It never was you. But it's so seductive, and that's why the support to create those habits, just in no different way, the support of going to rehab and having the drugs taken off you, just to give yourself a chance of not retaking those things up. And those who are sick of suffering the addiction, who are fed up with it, who don't want it anymore, they do really well in rehab, because that's where they're at. That's the support is now helpful. But a lot of people want to not be suffering the addiction and keep the addiction. And they'll swear black and blue, I want this, I want the help, but it's like, I want to keep it as well. So you can imagine, you've asked for a session here. The fear of death is trying to help you let go of the delusion of yourself inside, because you, the person, Holly, whatever she apparently is, cannot cope. She keeps saying it here, there, and everywhere. Like the acupuncturist brought into very clear view, I'm scared of everything. One of the questions is, the one who's observing the fear of death afraid of death? This one I want you to return to every time you go into that state.
Because that was really quick. Like, that was clear. I didn't even have to think about that. Whereas if I was in my bed going through, oh my God, am I going to die of an aneurysm tonight? That would not have happened, you know? So it is it's important that I can feel the difference between the two.
So ask yourself, is the one who is observing the fear of death afraid of death? And then you marinate in that until the storm passes. So take 5 minutes maybe, but you have to be the one who's disciplined, who takes self-responsibility and asks that question the moment those thoughts take traction, because you're addicted to them. You're an addict. There it is. It's got all the chemistry and all the adrenaline and everything in it to prop the person inside of me who's trying to get proof that I can't cope with life. It's all happening. So even after this conversation, it's guaranteed to come up. And then there you're going to be going, no. Now, do you try to stop the thoughts? No. You don't try to fight with the thoughts, because that's not going that only fuels the thoughts anyway. That strengthens the thoughts. What you do is you ask that question, and then you observe how clearly you're having thoughts, and they cannot stay with you. They literally cannot stay with you. The moment that you do that, they start to, it's like if it's like you have to try to keep them at that point, because it's hard to hold a thought. Do you know what I mean? Like consciously. So if you become its witness, and then guess what you're also witnessing? You're witnessing that feeling in your body of the dread of it, and you're feeling the heaviness in your stomach, and you're feeling your heart pumping, and you're just like, I'm just witnessing all of this. I'm not my body. I'm watching my body reacting to those thoughts. And what I'm going to trust is this is just a storm passing. And if I stay as the witness, in not too long away, it'll pass. So I'm not going to react and distract myself with Netflix and other things. I'm not going to go into any other story and let other thoughts become Velcro to this. I'm just going to be here and just let it pass. And then acknowledge when it's passed that it passed. You have to acknowledge that bit, because it'll come back. It'll come back a few times before it completely dies. And then you'll be telling someone, or myself, you'll be saying, I used to have this fear of death. I can remember it. I used to have this thing, but I don't have it now because I let it go. I let it go. I didn't hold on to this idea that I can't handle, because I just came back to the fact that I can. I wasn't telling myself I can handle it. I wasn't trying to self-coach myself. I was just watching the fact. Is the one afraid of this happening in a state of fear? No, it was a fact I was dealing with, not a nice idea, not an affirmation. I was dealing with a fact, and the fact set me free. The truth sets you free. Who is the truth? You are the truth. You are the truth. The thought is not the truth. You are the witness. The witness is the truth. So this is my advice to you, to do that for like a month. Take a little bit of time, 5 minutes or whatever, or listen to the self-recognition practice that you can download on this podcast. There's a link in the description. And just go, I'm just not going to go down that track. I'm not going to keep perpetuating that. You won't be able to do it every time during the day in that, because it will just keep coming up at different times. But at night time or in the morning time, you'll be able to do it. And then I want to touch base with you again and see how you've gone.
Great.
All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Are you satisfied? Do you have any other questions or?
No, that's perfect. I feel a lot more just at ease.
And has death disappeared?
Yeah, it has.
So just for anyone listening, we're not talking about the death of the body and the death of the mind. Yes, those things will die. And also, we're not talking about uncomfortable feelings and emotions. These things will happen with loss. There's no doubt. There's no getting away from grief, and there's no getting away from the emotions that you experience with those things. But you don't have to suffer them. You don't have to turn them into a thing, because it's not your business. It's not your business. And the more you realize that, you realize what your business is, and your business is to come home to yourself. And for anyone who wants to develop the habits and skills for that, that's what the self-intelligence work is. That's what the course is. That's what the community is. It's for those people who want to rehab themselves from their own internal suffering, because doing it alone can often be really challenging, and you can get very confused still in the immaturity of getting sucked into these thoughts all the time. And it's helpful to have a reminder there on a very regular basis, not to go down those tracks and those dream states. Like go dreaming again. It's like, wake up, come on. It's like having an alarm. Come on, wake up. And it's like, oh shit, I forgot. I needed reminding, you see. Perfect. Thank you so much for bringing this to the podcast for discussion. And yeah, I hope it's just very healing and supportive to yourself and anyone else who's tuned in.
Great. Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you got value out of this, please share it so that other people can benefit also. If you are fed up with the drama, overwhelm, or suffering going on in your life, and you would like expert guidance and support tailored to your situation, come and be a guest on the Self-Intelligence podcast. Don't go another day confused how to address the challenges you are facing. If you want to be a guest, go to the link in the description below. And for more information about self-intelligence, including joining my next Wake Up experience or detailed information about my self-intelligence course, go to selfintelligence.com.